Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I want to talk to you, Dr. Walensky. According to Twitter files reported by David Zweig on December 23rd, the Biden administration was working with Twitter to flag anything that conflicted or differed from CDC guidance as misinformation. Dr. Walensky, were you or your staff in meetings, phone calls, or virtual meetings with the Biden White House administration officials and Twitter? And that's a yes or no.
Thank you for the question. There's pending litigation on that, so I'm not going to get into the specifics on that today. Thank you.
What about Facebook and Instagram?
Similar.
Given reporting that CDC was consulted frequently and at times daily and on given recommendations on what content to flag as fake or misleading on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, how many staff did you have dedicated to working with technology companies?
Again, there's pending litigation on that, so I'm not free to comment right now.
Was there any centralized guidance from you about what staff should relay as fake or misleading?
Pending litigation. Regrets.
Well, Dr. Walensky, when there are numerous examples of individuals being flagged as misleading for referencing peer-reviewed studies, posting CDC's own data, or their own opinions as experts being called into question merely because it differs from your scientific perspective, that's just unacceptable. And let me ask you, Dr. Califf, let me go back to a question. Will the FDA commit to provide transparency for the raw data used to make key decisions during the course of the pandemic on vaccines and treatments? And specifically, will the FDA commit to releasing all data on complications and phase 4 monitoring to allow for outside analysis, yes or no?
We're committed to transparency on the information that we're collecting in our vaccine follow-up.
Okay, all data? And I'm asking you that because there was a FOIA request for Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine safety data. And from what we read, it said that it would take the FDA 75 years at 500 pages a year to get that 329,000 pages of data that the FOIA request asked for.
Well, I have to get back to you on that specific number. I'm not familiar with the exact number, but we'll do everything we can to make sure people are informed about vaccine safety.
Yeah, that would be very pertinent since these vaccines are going out to the public, these boosters are going out to the public, and I don't understand, it said in the article there were 10 employees that were requested to review that data for FOIA request. And how many employees do the FDA employ? How many do you have? Do you know?
We have 18,000 employees in total.
18,000 employees, but there's 10 that are put on FOIA requests. And at that rate, at 329,000 pages, and in the FDA saying that they could only do 500 pages a day, it would take 75 years. But if you would get back with me on that. And I have some other questions about CPG guidances and how they're construed as law, but I'll put that in writing for you. Let me see, I've got a little bit of time left. And I have another question. If I can find it, and it's about another recent health concern. On October 31st, 2022, the Republican leadership of this committee sent a letter to the NIH raising concerns and questions about a monkeypox or an mpox viral enhancement experiment being conducted at the NIAID. This experiment involves transferring the more lethal version of the mpox virus, which has about a 10% mortality rate in unvaccinated people, with the less lethal but more transmissible mpox virus circulating in the U.S. Now, the less transmissible mpox virus has a mortality rate of less than 1%, and the more lethal virus is classified as a federal select agent. And it appears that the project is reasonably anticipated to yield a lab-generated mpox virus that is 1,000 times more lethal in mice than mpox virus currently circulating in humans. The NIH has refused to respond to the committee's letter. And as Chairman Griffith mentioned, in stark contrast, the committee asked very similar questions to Boston University about its recent experience involving SARS-CoV-2, and the folks at Boston University were very forthcoming. And because they told us exactly what they were doing and why they were doing it, we're confident they're acting appropriately. And I will have follow-up questions for you, Mr. Tabak, about, since you haven't responded, why haven't you responded and what are you hiding? Did you fail to to follow select agent regulations? And did the NIH fail to follow its own guidelines and policies like it did with the EcoHealth grant?
The experiments that you're referencing did follow all the select agent guidelines. It was conducted in our intramural program. It was approved back in 2015. What they did was they replaced genes in the more virulent.
Well, you can continue. I know my time's up, and I know we're on a schedule, but if you would follow up in writing with me, and I do have some other questions for Dr. Walensky
And
about
I think
that.
we're still waiting to find out what level lab that's in too, but okay, we'll get that in writing later. Now,